It's my pleasure to introduce our esteemed presenter, Mr. John Chu. John is the Chief Insights Officer at Navitas, a global education provider with over 100 colleges and campuses in 18 countries.
Thank you so much, Minakshi, and Ravi for having me as well. It's always a pleasure to be back with you all. Just going to sort of give you an update of what's going on across the global international education market. And I'm going to start with a focus, of course, on government policy and everything that's been happening in that area. So this first section is called Government Policy Change, All Done or More to Come. I'll start off with a familiar story. Many of you have heard me talk about this one before, but just to give you a very quick overview for those of you who may be unfamiliar with the different eras of international education. I'll just go through three eras very quickly. From 1950 to 1980, international education was all about aid and influence. It was the aid and influence era. It was about post-war soft power. So think about what happened after the two world wars. You know, the US launched the Fulbright program. The UK launched Churchill scholarships. There was the Australian Asian Universities Cooperation Scheme, and if any of you who remember that eventually became the International Development Program, and then it became IDP. Of course, in Australia and our part of the world, the big program was the Colombo Plan, and you can see a photograph there of the ministers meeting in Colombo in 1950. So international education has always been a product of the times, and back then there were about 800,000 international students. That's represented by those blue bars in the chart above. If we move just briefly then to the period which most of us are familiar with, because as professionals, even as students, some of us, we're all products of mostly the market era. So if you think about the 1950s to 1980s, that would have been, you know, maybe our parents, our grandparents who were studying back then. 1980 to 2020, that was a new era for international education. It was all about growth, expansion, and diversification. So what were the drivers behind this? The biggest one was global trade and the falling costs of travel and the costs of communication. But of course, Australia introduced full fees for international students in 1985. I mentioned IDP before. They started doing student counseling in 1986. I could add in, you know, in this period, the year of when Global Reach started as well. But Navitas started in 1994. I've included some other events, you know, the advent of Windows 95 and Netscape and the iPhone, just to signify how dramatic this era has been. You know, with the advent of everything to do with the internet, global supply chains, as I said before, you know, the declining cost of communications and air travel. By 2025, we've gone from 800,000 international students globally to 6.9 million. So that's a big period of growth and expansion in the market era. This is helpful because it helps us understand that we are living in a different era today. This is the managed era. This is about politics, policy, and regulation. You know, all of the things that we grew accustomed to, that we took for granted in the last 40 or 50 years, globalization, you know, relatively free movement of people, all of that has become restricted in the managed era. It started, of course, with Brexit and COVID, which, you know, severely curtailed the movement of people. But we've also seen, because of inequality, because of geopolitics, because of rising nationalism, lots of other policies have been introduced since, including the cap on study permits in Canada. Some of you might remember Ministerial Directive 107, which wasn't that long ago. Of course, we tried capping international student numbers with the ESOS bill last year. And then this year, of course, we've brought in MD 111 and MD 115. And of course, just 24 hours ago, the passage of the legislation of the new different ESOS amendments that have been passed as well this week. So there's still lots going on. We're still seeing this era as a period of growth. If you look at even places across South Asia, but Africa, Latin America, Central Asia, there are still strong demographic drivers, still strong economic drivers. And we see in our modeling, more than 10.5 million students will be traveling abroad to study in 2035. This is a structural shift. A group of colleges like Navitas, we have to be really clear and realistic about what the growth rate is for the future. Thanks for having me.